The Galactic Training Accords of 2847 had been crystal clear. No physical violence during military exercises. The measure passed unanimously after the Vraxian Empire's cadets suffered widespread casualties during what should have been routine combat simulations. 43 species agreed that training should build warriors, not break them. Then humanity joined the Galactic Defense Coalition. Commander Zix Athala of the Altarian Navy watched with growing unease as the human contingent set up their equipment in Training Bay 7. Unlike the holographic projectors and neural simulators used by other species, the humans had brought games. Board games, card games, and something they called role-playing games that seemed to involve nothing more than dice, paper, and talking. "This is their military training?" she asked Captain Sarah Chen, the human liaison officer. Chen smiled. That peculiar human expression that somehow conveyed both friendliness and warning. "Trust the process, Commander." The first session began with 20 mixed-species cadets sitting around tables. No weapons, no combat gear, just the humans' strange collection of games. Zixthala observed from the monitoring deck alongside other species commanders, all equally bewildered. "We're going to start with something simple," announced Sergeant Marcus Rivera, a human with scars that spoke of real combat experience. "It's called Prisoner's Dilemma, but we'll be using a more comprehensive version." What followed defied every assumption about human simplicity that the galaxy had cultivated. Rivera didn't teach combat techniques or weapons handling. Instead, he taught betrayal. He taught the cadets to lie convincingly, to manipulate trust, to identify weaknesses not in armor or shields but in character and psychology. The Klaxon cadets, with their rigid honor codes, struggled initially. The aquatic Delphini, used to collective thought processes, found the concept of deliberate deception almost physically painful, but the humans guided them through it with patient, terrifying expertise. "Your enemy's greatest strength is often their greatest weakness," Rivera explained as he demonstrated a card game called poker. "The Vraxians' tactical precision makes them predictable. The Zenthari's hive mind means they can't adapt when cut off from the collective. Even your own species' honor, respected Klaxons, becomes a liability when facing an opponent who has no honor at all." Week by week, the games grew more complex. What started as simple bluffing evolved into elaborate psychological warfare scenarios. The cadets learned to read micro-expressions across 17 different species. They mastered the art of saying one thing while meaning another. They discovered how to plant ideas so subtly that their targets believed those thoughts were their own. Commander Zixthala watched her own cadets transform. Cadet Morthan, once a straightforward Altarian warrior, now moved through conversations like a predator, gathering information without his targets realizing they'd given it away. The change was so profound it made her skin crawl. "What are you doing to them?" she demanded during a meeting with the human instructors. Captain Chen's expression was unreadable. "We're teaching them to win. This isn't warfare, this is corruption." "Commander," Rivera interjected, "with respect, what do you think warfare actually is? It's not just about who has the bigger guns or faster ships. It's about breaking your enemy's will to fight. And the most effective way to do that is to make them break themselves." The demonstration came during the final exercise. The cadets were divided into 2 fleets for a strategic simulation, but not the kind the galaxy was used to. No ships were destroyed, no weapons fired. Instead, the human-trained cadets infiltrated the opposing fleet's command structure using nothing but words and manipulation. Within 6 hours, they had convinced the enemy admiral to surrender by making him believe his own officers were planning a mutiny. They achieved total victory without firing a single shot, using only the psychological techniques the humans had taught them. The observing commanders sat in stunned silence as they watched the after-action reports. The defeated fleet's admiral had to be sedated when he realized how completely he'd been manipulated. Several officers required psychological counseling. "By the 7 moons," whispered Commander Veth of the Crystalline Hegemony. "They turned warfare into an art form of cruelty." But it was Commander Zixthala who understood the true horror of what she'd witnessed. "They didn't invent this for us. she said quietly. They've been doing this to each other for millennia. This is how humans wage war among themselves. Captain Chen nodded solemnly. Politics, business, romance, family dynamics, we've been running these psychological operations on each other since before we discovered fire. We call it Tuesday. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't just survived their homeworld's harsh conditions. They'd survived each other. Every human was a combat veteran in a war most species couldn't even recognize was being fought. The Galactic Accords banned violence in training, Rivera added. They never said anything about teaching cadets to win wars without throwing a Wayu punch. 6 months later, the first human-trained units deployed against the Void Seekers, an aggressive species that had been expanding into coalition space. The conflicts that had raged for years ended within weeks, not through superior firepower, but through complete psychological dominance. Entire Void Seeker fleets surrendered after their crews became convinced their own leadership was corrupt and incompetent. The galaxy had learned an uncomfortable truth. Humans hadn't been banned from using violence in training because they were dangerous. They'd been allowed to continue because what they offered instead was infinitely worse. As one Void Seeker admiral wrote in his surrender document, "We can defend against weapons and warriors. We cannot defend against humans who convince us to defeat ourselves." The training accords were never amended. They didn't need to be. Humanity had found something far more effective than violence, the absolute mastery of the battlefield that existed in every sentient being's mind.